let's all just take a deep breath. Exhale. Let's all just relax when it comes to Georgia. Yes, it was 28-14 at half with UAB. Final score was Georgia 49, UAB 21. There's a lot to unpack with this one, all right? So we're about to do that, but really quickly, make sure you're locked in here. Georgia fans, we've had a lot of y'all subscribe to the channel. We appreciate y'all for that. If you have not yet subscribed, love to have you. Also, follow me on Twitter, follow me on Instagram, at JDPiquel. So thank you in advance for that. A lot of people going to look at what happened yesterday with Georgia and look at that halftime score, kind of throw them the side eye and say, okay, what's up with Georgia now? Kind of taking a second to get this thing rolling. Stetson Bennett's not there anymore. Todd Monk is not there anymore. What's going on in Athens? Hey, allowed a touchdown on that drive before the end of the first half. Like, is Georgia losing their touch? No, Georgia's not losing their touch. All right, let's all just kind of take a deep breath and relax. It's Tell the Truth Sunday right here. So let's focus on what's true. All right, what's true is, one, this is a new team. So all this talk around last year's 2022 national title, to a degree that's fair because you still got Kirby Smart. You still have a lot of that production back on the defensive side of the ball. But they're at the bottom of the mountain, right? They are starting their ascent. They're starting their climb. So they have to find a way now to sort of make this whole operation work the same way last year's team did. You got a new quarterback. You got a new OC. It's going to take a second to acclimate. And to be fair to Georgia as well, like, UAB isn't exactly, the team that gets you jacked up to go and play your best football. Now, that's the thing now with Kirby Smart and the way that he operates his program. They have to play their best football regardless of their opponent. And so far, the only opponent they've really played that has had a roster that has a talent level that would get you a little bit more jacked up is South Carolina. Had a slow start in the first half against them, eventually found their way. But what I want to say is, let's stop comparing Georgia from this year to Georgia of last year. They're two different teams. All right, I understand there is a desire to compare them because of what last year's team did, but this is a different team. So let's let this team sort of walk their own path, if you will. The other part of this is Georgia, the second thing that's true, they will have superior personnel against every team they play until they get to the SEC title game or the college football playoff. And that's not to knock other teams. I think that's more so a testament to the way they've recruited, the way they've developed, the way they've been able to keep talented recruits on their roster playing scout team because they trust the process and they trust it only takes one good year at Georgia to go and accomplish your NFL dreams. So that's why guys are content to play on the scout team for a year. That's why guys are content to redshirt, because somebody in front of them has waited their turn. They have their good year or two, and then they go to the league, and that's why you're able to keep those guys on the roster. But I want to say all that because whenever you have a showing like this, whenever there is a situation where there's an opportunity for people to say, oh, there's some cracks in the armor for Georgia. Well, hey, they see that halftime score? What happens when they play Tennessee? What happens when they play a team in the SEC title game that's going to make them pay? Like, yes, I understand where that's coming from, but just to drive this home, until Georgia reaches the SEC title game, until Georgia reaches the college football playoff, it will be about Georgia in every single game they play, meaning Georgia will be the better team in the majority of games that they play, if not every game they play until that point. So it's on them to execute and for them to play up to their standard, to their potential. That's not to knock UAB. That's not to knock South Carolina. It's just the matter of fact with the way they've recruited, the way they've stockpiled their roster with tons of talent, 4- and 5-star guys, and developed them. It's kind of the world you live in right now if you're Georgia. And it's a luxury that not a lot of college football teams have, but it's a reality when we assess Georgia. So I'm not looking at Georgia the way they match up with UAB and saying, wow, UAB is exposing some things with Georgia. No, Georgia's not executing some things. Kind of the reality right now. I would also say this. Last year's team also had a similar part of the early part of the season. Like you had that game against Kent State where they didn't really look as impressive as you would want them to. Had that game against Missouri where they got to come from behind. And a lot of people were saying the same things about Georgia last year. Like I promise you, there's some pockets of the college football landscape now sort of raising an eyebrow at this game and saying, okay, what's up with Georgia? They were saying the same thing last year. So just kind of let them talk what they want to talk. And then when it comes to November, I promise you, this Georgia football team, we said it last week, we'll say it again, when they get to November, what you saw yesterday, what you saw against South Carolina, heck, I bet what you see this upcoming week against Auburn will be very different than what you see in November. Okay, so this Georgia football team, they're building to it. Give them a second to sort of find their footing. Carson Beck, even so, I mean, even with all the things you want to say about Georgia last night, 22 for 32, 338 yards, 3 touchdowns, like he looked good. And if this is the starting point for him and that offense, they're going to continue to become more and more explosive. And Kirby Smart was asked, what do you expect from the offense? And he said just that, explosive. And they're a little bit dinged up too right now, but Brock Bowers, he's a one of one. He's a freak of nature. I don't think anybody in the country is matching up with him and feeling good about it. So let's all just sort of slow our roll when we make a definitive statement about Georgia. Let's let this thing bake a little bit, and we'll kind of assess them when we get into October, November. Then we can start to talk about Georgia and start to try and get a gauge for what they're going to be. Because I promise you right now, man, feel pretty confident saying when it comes to the end of this thing, when it comes down to Selection Sunday and the SEC title game, like, feel pretty confident Georgia's going to be in those conversations pretty firmly because of, again, talent and because of internal standard. There was a clip going around on social media with Kirby Smart barking at his team, and he wasn't barking about execution. He was barking at different players and saying, where's the leadership? Are we upholding the standard? And I'm sure there was different clips that were cut out of that where he is coaching guys up, but I think that's kind of a peek behind the curtain. Georgia's worried about upholding their standard. They're not worried about, winning the next game by a certain, margin and by having style points and what the committee thinks. Like, there's going to be a time and place for all that. But I promise you, the real work for Georgia, the real thing that they're stressing about is during the week in practice, upholding the input so they can get the output they want. So for Georgia, again, anyone who is having anything to say about Georgia at this point in time, I would tell them, hey, let's all together just let them know they can relax a little bit. It's still September, and this football team is going to be very different when it comes to November. We appreciate y'all rocking with us. Make sure you're locked in. Make sure you're subscribed. Follow me on the socials on Twitter and on Instagram at JD Pickell. You can call it X if you want to as well. I'm also JD Pickell there. We appreciate y'all. We love y'all. We're going to keep this party rolling. We will see y'all next time. Hey y'all, thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel here to make sure you don't miss an episode of The Hard Count. Also be sure to check out other videos on the On3 YouTube channel.